There's three subjects I'm going to talk about, which may seem a bit odd to put them together. And I think, Jean-Christian, tu as dit exactement, pour moi, ce qui est le plus important, c'est le ici et maintenant. So the most important thing is here and now. The most important thing is that you're sitting over there and I'm standing on this stage, and guess what? We're both breathing. We're both breathing. And this is something that, in my experience, I don't know, maybe it's different for you guys. But in my experience, people don't know their own breath. If I asked you, where are you breathing? I don't know whether you can answer that question. I trained as an actor, and I can tell you that a lot of the times people would say to you, before you go on stage, take a deep breath. Right? And so I thought that's what breathing was about. When you're under pressure, when you're in front of a problem, take a deep breath. And it's true. It's absolutely true. But it's so much more than that. So much more. And to do with what you said, Jean-Christian, which is to be here and now. Because the one very easy method to find out whether you're here and now, what do you think it is? It's to know whether you're breathing or not. It's to check in with your breath. Check in with your breath. So I'm going to give you a kind of a challenge in the next 15 minutes. Is how long can you keep your awareness of your breath, breathing from your belly, if you possibly can, how long you can maintain that awareness as I go through my wonderful PowerPoint, which some of you hate and some of you might love. I love PowerPoint, but I hope you'll agree with me, a good PowerPoint. So maybe you don't like it. I'm okay with criticism, by the way. I'm okay if you don't like my PowerPoint. I'm okay if you don't like me talking about the breath. I'm okay if you don't like me talking about the future. I'm okay with that. Do you know why? Because I've worked really hard at understanding for me the importance of that. I can't work really hard to tell you about the importance of that. That's your problem. That's your responsibility. That's your decision. And you must keep that decision. Very important. So I'm going to talk about what's important to me. And if it's not important to you, I'm okay with that. That's no problem. But I'm going to do my job, which is to be 100% behind my 50%. The other 50% is your responsibility. So, the breath. I'm going to begin with that. Doesn't seem very logical. I know, the future, leadership, and the breath. I'm going to begin with the breath because I want you to be aware of your breathing while we're talking. There's 14 minutes left, right? So you've got to keep that awareness of where you're breathing, of how much you're breathing during the next 14 minutes, okay? So why is the breath so important? Well, we're in France, right? We like good food, right? You enjoy eating. How long can you go without food? 12 hours? Come on, Josette, you could do better than that. 24. Come on, you could do better than that. 3 hours. No, you could go a week. You could go 2 weeks. 10 days. You can go a month without food. Really, you can. It's not easy. I know everyone's shaking their heads and saying, no way. But you can do it. You really can do it. What about water? How long can you go without water? Yeah, it's somewhere around a week. Somewhere around a week, and you start having big problems with your vital organs, right? After a week, let's say, 7 days, just to be schematic. Okay, what about the breath? Hello, seconds, minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So don't you think we should be paying a little bit of attention to this activity that we have inside of ourselves, which is so vital for our life? Shouldn't we be thinking about it a little bit? Just a little bit? Come on, be reasonable. Be reasonable. I do weekend workshops on the breath. I do 6 days intensive on the breath. And do you know what people say? 6 days on the breath? You're crazy. 6 days. But it's the most vital thing for our lives. What is the first thing we do when we come into this world? When we pop out, sorry for the rather grotesque definition of a birth, but I'm an African woman, right? So I give birth, right? I give birth to a baby child. What does that child do? The first activity, the first thing they do, they breathe. So I'll ask you a lot of questions. Breath is the answer to all of them. It's a bit like Stéphanie de Monaco. It's the answer to all the questions. What's the last thing that you do before you die? Breath. You give up. That's it. Finished. Done. So, again, I'm going to ask you the question. Don't you think we should be paying a little bit of attention to this? Don't you think? Yes. Okay, that's another answer to the question. So, why have I tied it in with leadership and the future is because a little bit about what Jean-Christian said earlier was that the breath really teaches you to be here and now. The breath teaches you to be in your belly, is what Hervé was talking about. The breath teaches you to be anchored, to be ancré, to be grounded. The breath teaches you all that. So it's like Father Christmas. It's like whatever you want, ask the breath for it, and it will give it to you. It's that good. It really is that good. So I'm going to ask you, what do you want from these next 10 minutes? Because in 10 minutes, I hope that the information I'm going to share with you is going to bring you a little bit closer to something that you would really like in your life, something that you would really want. So just take a quick inside check as to, in my life, what don't I like so much? What is not going as it could do? What is not perfect in my life? Maybe it's my relationship, my intimate relationships. Maybe it's my job. Maybe it's my finance. Maybe it's my relationship with my family, with mommy and daddy. Maybe it's relationship with my children. Whatever it is, whether it's your professional career or whatever it is, just summon it. I'm not going to ask you because I'm not going to ask you to announce that publicly. Just keep it in mind. And then we'll check at the end of the presentation and see whether it's changed or it's moved in some way, okay? So the words that I use are change, improve, and develop. So what would you like to change, improve, and develop? Because I'm going to be talking about the future. I'm going to be talking about how we should proceed with caution with the future. Because, number one, we really need to be thinking about the future. We really need to be really thinking about the future because as some of our speakers said yesterday, there's a lot going on. We've got a lot of challenges in front of us. We've got a lot of problems to solve. And what do we do as human beings when we have lots of problems to solve? What do we do? Come on, admit it. Admit it. What do? We run. We hide. We don't face up to the future. So the future carries a paradox. The paradox is we don't do enough of it and we do too much of it. Because what we do is we're constantly projecting into the future. We're constantly saying, what's going to happen tomorrow? What am I going to do next week? How can I be successful? How can I solve these issues that I have? How can I find this a better relationship? How can I find someone that's ideal in my life who I love dearly? I'm not making a suggestion, but it's how can I find an answer to all the problems that I have? And this is us going into the future. So I'm going to talk about, why we need to pay attention to this and why we need to, God, it's going so quickly. Yeah, so the future, we've got to proceed with caution. We've got to look at this and we've got to say, hey, wait a minute. The future doesn't exist. As Jean-Christian said, it's only now that exists. The future is a mental construct. So we have to know that. We have to understand that. And what does that mean? Well, it means that we have to bring to the table, whenever we're thinking about the future, we have to bring to that table the whole of our resources, all of our intellectual, emotional, physical, and spiritual resources to the table. We have to work out what we really want from the future. We have to bring more heart to it. We have to bring more spirit to it. We have to bring more common sense to it. We have to access all your resources. And that, by the way, is a way of describing the present, the way of describing being in the here and now. One of the synonyms or one of the ways of knowing whether you're in the here and now is, do you access all your resources? People talk to me about confidence. Forget confidence. Forget waiting for more confidence. Forget about that. It's a waste of time. Just work on your presence. Work on accessing your resources. That's really important. Like the breath. Really important. So you've got to work out what's important and what's not so important. What are you going to concentrate on? What are you going to focus on in the future? You've got to work out, who are you in the future? You've got to work out, are you a creator? Are you purpose-driven? Are you really going for something? Or are you a victim? Because so often, when we think about the future, we become victims. It's Macron that's going to do this. It's so-and-so that's going to do this. It's my boss that's going to do this. We become victims of the situation. So we've got to work out, when we project into the future, when you project about the problem that you have into the future, what are you? Who are you? Are you a creator or are you a victim? Really important information. Really important. This could move the needle for you. Just this one thing. This could really make a difference. Second thing that makes a difference is you've got to clarify. What do you want in the future? What do you want? This one thing, this one problem that you have, this one difficulty you have. I don't have enough money. I don't have the right jobs. I don't have that. How are you thinking about it? This is what one of the speakers said yesterday. Your thoughts. What are you thinking? Because I can guarantee that if this thing is not working out for you, if your profession's not working out for you, then you're looking at it in the wrong way. You're not clarifying what you want from this future. And you've got to work on your relationship to the future. And Abraham Lincoln said a most marvelous thing. He said, hey, don't try and predict the future because you're going to be wrong. But create it because it's the best way to predict the future. Create the future. Make it yours. Make the future yours. So you've got to work out what you want from the future. You've got to clarify your intentions. And this is really, really important, and maybe you've heard it enough, but in my experience, people don't do it. People do not do it, especially with their problem areas. If they have a problem with their intimate relations, for instance, they will think, oh, I want the ideal guy, I want the ideal woman, I want them. Mental construct. I want them. But wait a minute, let's bring the emotional dimension in. Let's bring the practical dimension. Let's bring the spiritual dimension so that we're using all our resources, alignment, to get what we want. That's when we're talking. Because I've never seen a fully aligned person not get what they want in the end. When you're fully aligned, things move. Things move. If you're not getting what you want, it's because you're not fully aligned. It's that simple. So I'm going to go really quick because it's like ridiculous. I've only got sort of 2.5 minutes left. Predictions are mostly wrong. And so a really important concept from Otto Scharmer, who wrote Theory U, is that the future's not in the future. The future's in the here and now. You've got to see it. You've got to see it emerging. Okay, I'm going to move really quick. Leadership. What's the most important thing in leadership? Quick. Most important thing in leadership. Most important thing in leadership is who is behind the wheel. Who is behind the wheel? Are you behind the wheel or is someone else behind the wheel? It's that simple. It's really that simple. So in leadership, what do you need? Well, you need to create influence. You need to create influence on who? On you. That's what you've got to work on. You've got to influence you, especially if you want what you want. If you want to get what you want, you've got to influence you. It's simple. So how do you do that? How do you influence yourself? Well, you align. That's what I said earlier, right? You align head, heart, body, spirit. And who are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about, obviously, Mahatma Gandhi, you must be the change, duh. If you want this ideal relationship, then you got to be it. Yeah. Nobody told you this. They didn't tell me. I had to work this out for myself. It took me years to work it out. Okay, so yes, what does it mean? It means idealized influence. It's the first category of transformational leadership, which is what I use as a tool. The second thing in transformational leadership is you've got to consider other people. Because here you are, if you're fully aligned, you've got your thing, and you're going for it, you're going for it. Well, you've got to consider your ecosystem. You've got to be kind to those around of you. So that's the second principle. Third principle is you've got to put some challenge into it. You've got to push your ass. You've got to move yourself. You've got to get going. You've got to put some challenge into your leadership. And you've got to challenge yourself. Fourth principle is that you've got to, in the end, you've got to work on your inspiration. And I love you guys because you're all working on your inspiration. And that is so important. You've got to work on it. And you've got to work on what your sources of inspiration are. Who are your sources of inspiration? What are your sources of inspiration? And you've got to keep them nice and close because they come from everywhere. They come from upstairs, they come from downstairs, they come from left, they come from right. But you've got to know what your sources of inspiration are. Really important information. So those are the principles of leadership. I'm going to talk very quickly about breath work. Yes, breath work goes into a lot of different areas. The breath work that I talk about is transformational breath. It's the most dramatic because I'm an ex-actor, so of course I would go for something a bit dramatic. It really is dramatic. You transform things. How do you transform them? Well, you transform them by realizing, understanding that the breath moves every system in your body. You don't know that, but it does. It works faithfully to move the blood circulation, the lymphatic circulation. It has a major effect on your body, on your emotions, on your mind, and on your spirit. And so, of course, it helps you align. When you breathe well, you align well. So, what else? Well, it moves your energy from the mind to the heart, or the mind to the guts, as Helve reminded us yesterday, how important it is to breathe from the belly. And so it opens your heart to more kindness, more self-compassion, more gentleness towards yourself and towards others. Because you see that they have the same problems that you do. You see that because you're breathing and they're breathing. And so there's a very fundamental connection that you have with other human beings. And so very quickly, it activates your personal power. You become more powerful. Why? Because you're breathing with the whole of your body. You're accessing the totality of your inner resources, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And you're working on that all the time. You're calling upon that. You're calling upon your inner resources to be present with you. And so, inevitably, it allows you access to states of consciousness that bring more inspiration, that bring more possibility and motivation. So, conclusion, proceed with caution, get behind the wheel of your leadership, become leaders in your lives. If you're interested in, it's all about you. It's all about you. Why? Well, the answer is everything else has been Googled, so you might as well concentrate on the one thing that can't be Googled, which is you. This is the Presence of Breath weekend that we do in Montpellier, near the south of France. It's based on a book called The Presence Process, which, if there's one thing you take away from this talk, buy this book, please. The Presence Process, the processus de la présence. We're all interested in presence. We're all speakers. We're all coaches. Buy this book. It costs 25 euros. It's the best investment you'll ever make in all your life. It really is. It really is. And I have no shares in his book profits or whatever. And of course, the second best book is Breathing into Now. The Power of Now. Eckhart Tolle. You heard about it? Yeah. It's just sensational. We do a weekend based on this. We link the breath with it, and it's just amazing. We also do a 6-day seminar, which I've talked about. Again, it's fantastic. Look me up on, here's the contact points, transformationalleader.com, paulbarrett.com, and you can email me. I'm passionate about the breath, so if you want to talk about the breath, I will talk for days, weeks, months about the breath. So please contact me, and thank you.
You are a fantastic source of inspiration.
Thank you.
So good on the stage.
Thank you.
Remarkable. I have a question for you, Paul.
Okay.
Paul, what is the moment that left you breathless?
Wow, that's a beautiful question. Well, it was maybe my first breathing session. It's the second breathing session I did. It was a short weekend I did in Switzerland 8 years ago, so it's a relatively new thing in my life. It changed completely my life. I went to Switzerland to do this course called, it was called The Presence of Breath, and it was a mixture between Michael Brown's Presence Process and Transformational Breath. And on my second breath session, I was just under a wave of intense rage went through me. And this rage against the injustice of life, and the injustice of my own life, or the suffering I had. Well, I didn't have that much suffering, but I was full of rage. And then I went through sadness, and then after that, I was suddenly, and that's when the breathless part came in, I just suddenly went into an incredible silence where I felt my own presence. I felt this incredible benevolence and love within myself that just turned up. And I felt this paradox of something intensely familiar. I remember saying to myself, oh, it's you. And at the same time, something incredibly mysterious, something incredibly big. And then I put a name on it and I said, oh, Paul, that's your presence. That's your presence. And paradoxically enough, you don't need to breathe. That's what's so strange about it. And that's why you can sometimes be breathless when you're in your own presence. And so that's what my life is dedicated to now. It's understanding and getting close as possible to presence.
Thank you for your presence with us today. You've left us, I think, all breathless.
Well, I hope you're breathing. So. Thank you.
Alors Paul, j'ai retenu 3 mots qui est manger, boire et respirer. Et autour de ces 3 mots, il y a eu toute une inspiration conférence qui a été géniale. Voilà. Et donc je retiens ces 3 mots et c'était formidable. Le fait qu'il fallait vivre dans le présent, qu'il fallait arrêter de courir et qu'il fallait prendre le temps de respirer, prendre le temps de ce qui était autour de nous. Et ça, c'est ce que j'ai retenu de cette conférence. Ce que je retiens de Paul, c'est qu'il est inspirant et respirant.
Paul m'a justement coupé le souffle. Pendant les dizaines de minutes de sa conférence, j'ai fait attention à la manière dont je respirais. J'ai pensé d'ailleurs à la conférence aussi de Cynthia la veille qui parlait aussi du souffle, avec son souffle confe. Et donc j'ai essayé de faire la différence entre les deux. Et c'est vrai que la prise de conscience du souffle telle que le présente Paul c'est quelque chose d'essentiel pour nous, les conférenciers. C'est quelque chose d'essentiel pour toutes les personnes qui doivent prendre la parole en public. Donc c'est valable aussi pour les leaders, pour les managers. Et c'est franchement, oui, c'est époustouflant. Donc rien d'autre à dire là-dessus. What I loved is to be aware of my breath. I didn't realize how important it was compared to food and drinking and or water, just water. It's true that we cannot stop breathing. So being aware of your breath and the way and how important it is for you in order to be able to be aligned and to manifest where you want to go is absolutely important. Paul is just inspiring. So his level of energy makes you transformed instantly while listening to him.
La conférence de Paul était une conférence très intéressante, mais qui nous a poussé à beaucoup d'introspection. Une introspection à la fois sur le thème, mais aussi sur notre ressenti, notre façon de fonctionner. Et en très peu de temps, il balaie tous les arguments qu'on pourrait lui opposer sur qu'est-ce le leadership aujourd'hui. Et en quoi la respiration finalement est indissociable de notre vie. La simplicité de ces messages et la puissance derrière. Ça serait que c'est vraiment un personnage hybride. Donc il va très bien dans le thème en fait. Il est d'une complexité, de la qualité de tout qu'il a mis en place pour en être là aujourd'hui. Et à la fois d'une profondeur qui fait énormément de bien.
I really enjoy Paul conference. I'm a yoga teacher, so of course I'm very convinced about breath. But what is very interesting is his way to talk about this subject for leaders in companies, and I really enjoyed his point of view, and it's really possible to talk about this subject in companies, and he has the right approach. So I really recommend him. He's very convincing and lots of presence in his body, in his voice, and he challenges to breathe when we hear his conference. So it's a very good challenge. Aligned.